afternoon. Welcome to the Kensington Corner. I'm Tom.
And I'm Jeff.
Today we have Scott from Barbell Logic. Scott, how you doing?
Hey, good, man. Thanks for letting me come on your show and talk to your people.
No, I'm really excited. You know, I've been telling Jeff, I've been following you for a while now, and with online.
Wait a minute. Does Jeff not follow me?
He does.
No, actually, I've been following you on Instagram since about Tuesday night now. So
long time follower, first time caller.
Long time follower, first time caller.
It's kind of how I go. I'm always a little late to the bandwagon. So,
but I've been telling him about you, and then I'd mentioned to him, hey, I reached out to this guy a while back and wanted to get his opinion on what he thought about setting up the podcast and everything. And I was like, he's brilliant, got a lot of good things going. They do a lot of things down there in Oklahoma. And Jeff was like, oh, we gotta interview him one day. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna send him out and see what he thinks about the podcast. And then when you got back to us, I was elated, actually. So
here's how dense I am, Scott. I was sitting here with Tom literally 15 minutes ago, and I kind of just wrote up a couple of questions, just to kind of guide myself, whatever. I hadn't even made the connection that that Barbell Logic and then what's the book
online great books.
The online great books were both yours, and I got really excited because I was like, well, shit, I'd much rather talk about online great books. But
he was like, yeah, I got all these barbell questions, and then I was like, yeah, we were talking about books, and he was like, wait, what's your favorite book? And I was like, I think the Jungle Book. And he just laughed. And I was like, I don't know it. Everyone tries to do, Jeff was saying, everyone tries to do this. They try to think of something profound to say is their favorite book.
Right.
Well, what do you think yours is?
I don't know. Which is your favorite kid?
Well, I don't have kids, so I mean, that's the.
Okay. Look. Okay. This is what the show's going to be. Why doesn't Jeff have any kids? Do you hate yourself?
That's a loaded question.
That's a loaded question.
You could do a whole podcast series on that.
Okay. I'm game. I don't have anything the rest of the afternoon. The book thing, there are books that are fun to read, there are books that you read for entertainment, and there are books that continue to mean something for you for year after year after year, and it's like friends. You got some friends you just tell fart jokes with, and other friends you call when, there's trouble,
Yeah.
But who's your favorite friend? I don't know. But I don't know, man. I love the Republic, Plato's Republic. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be profound. The thing's fun. The thing's fun. There's the story of the Ring of Gyges, where Socrates tells a story about a guy that has a ring, and he turns the ring and he's invisible. And he's like, if you could be invisible, what would you do? And the guy's like, well, I'd go to the king's wife's apartment and check her out. It's like going to the girls' locker room,
Yeah.
Like anything any 14-year-old would say. There's fun stuff in there. There's profound stuff. It tells us about human nature. I mean, I've read it over and over and over again, and it holds up. Every time I read it, there's something new, So there's all kinds of stuff I like. But I've read that many, many times lately. It used to be Catch-22.
My man.
It changes around.
Yeah, Jeff's a big Catch-22. He was actually he was just telling someone about Catch-22 the other day that was interested in reading it. Jeff was like, "You need to."
Well, and I haven't watched it yet, but I know Hulu, just put out the Catch-22 mini series. I don't know anything about it, but Catch-22's been one of my favorite books since I first read it when I was probably a freshman in high school or something around there. And it's one of those books that I've read multiple times, and that's one of those things Tom and I were actually talking about just before we got on with you. Is it's funny, as you get older, and when you go back and reread books, how where you're at in your life, how that perspective kind of changes how I guess you associate with those books. And it's really a fascinating process going back and reading a book that, say, that you read in your childhood, and then coming back when you're in your 20s or 30s and reading it, and you tend to take something. A lot of times you take a lot of the same things away, but sometimes you see something completely new, a total different aspect that you've never realized before.
Yeah, and then some of them just fall completely dead, like that piece of shit Catcher in the Rye. Like when you read that when you're 15, you're like, oh man, this is so cool. Then you read that when you're 44, you're like, this kid's a piece of shit. Like this book isn't saying anything good or interesting about people. There's nothing virtuous about this kid. This is just a nihilistic, just bit of confusion. And, that in, when a young person reads it in that nihilistic, confused stage of their life, they just glom onto it.
Oh yeah.
And then once you've seen that life's hard and people die and things go on, and that's what makes it all interesting, you're like, this is just, he's the first millennial. I don't like it. But when people hit that book at that right stage in their life, it's super important to them. But I don't think it's a great book, because you come back to it. If an 81-year-old read that for the first time, they would think this is nothing nonsense. Profound about humanity.
Yeah.
But you read something, I think Catch-22 does have something profound to say about it. Like, if you're a kid and you haven't done military service, you've still probably been in school, which is just absurd. There's like this weird power structure there and nothing makes sense. You can't get out, you get it,
Yep.
And then when you're older, you're in the corporate world maybe, or whatever. And it just holds up. It holds up. Catching the Rye doesn't hold up. Sorry, all y'all. Like it, you're wrong. Sorry.
Sometimes the truth hurts.
It does. Yeah, we actually were bringing up the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series, and just how for the age bracket, it kind of seems like a children's book. But I remember reading it for the first time, I don't know, probably 6th or 7th grade, and was like, oh, this is a great book. And then reading it again at 20, probably 25. I was like, man, this is actually an outstanding series. Like, you don't really, a lot more sticks out to you. It's more of an adult series than it is a children's series.
Okay.
It's not sold that way though.
How about this? I haven't seen Star Wars, and I haven't read those books.
Oh my gosh, you got to read them.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think so. I have no doubt that they're great. Like, some people that I think a great deal of, like my friend Carl Shute, who works with me at Online Great Books. He's a starting strength coach and stuff. He loves the Lord of the Rings. He's got good reasons for it. He's communicated it to me. I think Tolkien is a great thinker and a great writer. I just don't like that aesthetic. And there's some other stuff I haven't read that I want to get to first. I've only got I'm 44. I think I'll be dead in 41 years. Like, I don't know it's going to make it on the list.
I have a whole bookshelf right now I need to read, and I feel like I keep just buying more books and just never getting around to them at all.
Do you find in your personal reading that you gravitate towards a particular genre, or are you kind of like one of the kind of all over the place, just, voracious reader, whatever you can get your hands on, basically? Or
well, for years I had I've kept a reading log since I was 14 or 15.
Oh,
and for years I tried to read a book a week, and I did that for, I don't know, a long time. And I read a lot of, business stuff and self-help stuff, and, all those kind of classics like Acres of Diamonds and How to Win Friends and Influence People, and those Og Mandino books, and business stuff, guerrilla marketing, and whatever, all that stuff, and I read all the Tom Clancy stuff, and just, and people would say, hey man, you ought to read this book, and I'd throw it down. I'd put it on the to read stack. And I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I was like, man, I'm not going to, I don't know how many books have been published since people started like scratching stuff on bark, like, I don't know, millions. And like, I'm not going to live long enough to keep reading books that people are just like, hey man, you ought to read this. Like, that's not good enough of a recommendation, because I don't have time for them all. And and there was stuff I had never read, like John Locke, or I hadn't read Last of the Mohican, maybe, And so I'm like, man, there's a bunch of stuff that people tend to agree is pretty good, and it's not Danielle Steele. And I'm going to start working through the stuff that's pretty good,
Yeah, Jeff was making fun of me the other day for I have The Count of Monte Cristo on, and I haven't read it yet.
Bullshit, man. That's one of my all-time favorite books.
No, I mean,
I haven't read it either.
Because you hadn't read it.
Yeah, I hadn't read it yet. That's why he was making fun of me. I had not read it yet, but it's on my bookshelf, and he was talking about it, and I was like, yeah, I haven't read it yet, man. I got to get around to it. Like,
that's one of those things. Like,
I hadn't read it yet either.
Yeah,
I find myself doing that all the time. Like, I'll go to the bookstore. Next thing I know, I got 8 books in my bag, and it's like, okay, well, now when am I going to read them? And yeah, that's one thing in my personal life. Like, I really need to spend more time, focusing on, making time for that sort of thing. Cause I really do love it. And, I don't know if you've listened to I talked about this in the very first podcast Tom and I ever did, but I went through a really serious bout of depression a number of years ago. And actually, one of the things my therapist at the time told me, he said, hey, re-engage with the things you used to like to do. And I really, really, truly believe that reading, going back to reading for pleasure was one of the things that really helped me, make some of those connections and get out of that spot in my life. And that's something, I'll never forget.
Reading the really good stuff can help us get out of ourselves. And there's escapism that's in it. And that can be bad. That can also be good. For example, if you read some Plato and you wrestle the idea of virtue alongside with Socrates and his friends in the Meno, you get to not worry about your own virtue for a minute. And you get to think about those ideas kind of in a laboratory. You get to stand aside from those things and not take them so personally and follow their lead for a minute. And it's escapism, but it's something that you can like bring yourself back to later or bring to yourself later. And it's great. Whereas binge watching, I don't know, fill in the blank HBO series, I don't know about that. So it's something that's important to me. And I think everybody wants to be more well-read. Everybody wishes they did it more and they don't. And, we created this online great books thing because I wanted people to do it. I think that not just reading them, but discussing them with other people. Like people don't have friends, particularly men, I think, don't have friends like they once did. In the 70s, when I was in the early 80s, when I was a little kid, like every middle-class neighborhood, like that guy over there, he was like a ham radio dude. And then that guy over there worked on a hot rod. And the other guy, he was like into woodworking. And this other guy had like model trains, and they were all in like a club, the RC airplane club. Like people had these hobbies and they'd come together. They'd talk about this thing they were interested in, and they had friends, played cards. And that's gone, man. People like sit in front of a rectangle with these pictures on it and like binge watch whatever. And they've lost connection with other people. And reading those books and then going to a seminar and discussing them, I think helps us find out who we are again. And we put this thing together. And the idea is you read 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week. It's 3 hours a week. And a year later, you've read 14, 15 of the biggest, best, most important books in the world, and met some cool people that like to talk about that stuff. And, it's working. Got a whole bunch of people doing it.
Yep.
And it holds me accountable too. It makes me read better.
Absolutely. And there's something definitely to that. Like, unfortunately it's kind of fallen apart, but a number of years ago, I, had it was really just about 4 of us total. We had kind of a little book club, and we kind of had a book list. We go through and, everybody put together some books they wanted to read.
Was it Oprah's book list?
What's that?
Oprah's book list.
Did you guys use Oprah's book list?
Yeah. But it was really great because, it was just, like I said, me and 3 other guys, and we would, we get together and we'd read a book in a couple of weeks, and we get online and we type some stuff up, or we talk on the phone about it, talk in a group text about it. Just, it was a really, like I said, unfortunately, it was just one of those things that everybody's so busy, they had a hard time keeping up with it, but it was really an amazing experience while it was going. And it's one of those things, man, I'd really like to get going again. You mentioned, basically like reading a book a week. That's something I really strove for for a few years. I actually managed to do it, where I think I read about right around 60 books for about 3 years a year for about 3 years in a row. And, it's kind of one of those things that especially coming back to school now, it's one of those things that I just haven't made time for it, but it's such a worthy way to spend your time. You get so much out of it. And,
I have, I don't read 50 books a year anymore. I read 17 last year. I read 17 last year. I read The Red Flyer. Would you like to hear what I read last year?
Yeah.
By the Red Baron, right? Manfred von Richthofen. It's his memoir. I I read The Automatic Customer by John Warlow, which probably was a waste of time. The City of God by St. Augustine. 12 Rules for Life by Peterson.
Great
it's not
books.
any good.
What?
We're going to go around about that. Now he's making shit up. The Odyssey. Confessions by St. Augustine. On Kingship by St. Thomas Aquinas. Prometheus Bound. Reflections on the Revolution in France by Edmund Burke. The Meno by Plato. Letters of England, Voltaire. Skin in the Game by Taleb. The Great Conversation by Robert Hutchins. The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. Dante's Inferno. The Cardinal Virtues by St. Thomas Aquinas. And Purgatorio by Dante. So that ain't 52. That ain't 52. This Mortimer Adler that started this whole great books movement. He says it's not how many books you get through, but how many get through to you.
Right.
Let's see here. Let's see when the last year was. I read 52. 2014 was the last year I'd read 52. But the quality of the books that I do read has gone way, way up, and I think I'm better off for it.
At that point, do you think that you were just kind of like, I'm going to read as many books as I can, doesn't matter what it is, let me get through them? When you were reading,
yeah, I mean, I was quite goal driven for sure. Like, shit, it's Thursday, I'm behind. There was certainly some of that. I was goal driven, which is both good and bad. But there was I just wanted to read a lot of stuff. I was reading a lot of popular stuff, contemporary popular stuff. I'd read like Jack Reacher novels.
Right.
Like any of those, action novels. Just all kinds of stuff, science fiction, Ed McBain, mysteries. I just read everything. And I love that stuff. I don't have any problem with it, but I don't know, man, like contemplating my mortality, I guess is one of the reasons why I've become more picky about the things I am reading.
Yeah. My big thing is I've gotten to, I've started a few books here lately where I'll get to about page 20 and I'm like, yeah, this just isn't doing it for me. And I'll put it down, where I used to just kind of barrel through the books and be like, yeah, I'll get through it no matter what. I've gotten to a point now to where I'm like, yeah, nah, I started a book, The Happy Hypothesis. Was that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah, they're the hypothesis of happy or something like that. I got to like page 20 on it, and I was like, not that it wasn't any good, it just wasn't. It just wasn't.
Yeah, it's no good. It's fine.
Yep, fair enough. But I got to like page 20, and I was like, yeah, this isn't doing it for me, man. I gotta do something else.
Well, I think there's something to be said about being picky, and I personally tend to give a book probably a little bit more than that, but. I mean, if you're not digging it, like, why waste your time? Kind of like you said, contemplating your own mortality. Time's a commodity. You got to make it count. So, why read something that isn't really doing it for you?
Yeah, I mean, there are some letters that are floating around that were written around the time of the Gutenberg press, where people are like, "Oh no, now everybody's going to be writing books." Like, they were really worried about books being too easy to publish. Like, there's just going to be we're going to be swamped with stuff. You know what? They're right. I mean, there's like Harlequin romances and just garbage, and it's all pulling at our attention. And now we have the internet and blogs, and it used to be newspapers and magazines. I mean, there's all kinds of short form stuff that's some of which is excellent, but a lot of it's just noise. And being more selective about what we read, I think, is important. The patron saint of the Wildland Great Books is Mortimer Adler. He taught at the University of Chicago when he was a Great Books guy. He was at the first Great Books program there at Columbia with John Erskine. And he wrote this book called How to Read a Book. And in that book, he says you ought to read every book twice. And the first way you read it, he calls it inspectional reading. And you look at the table of contents, you look at the stuff in bold, you read the blurb on the back of the thing. And he's like, you probably read 90 books that way for every one book that you maybe really do read. Right? So you spend like 10 minutes. It's like, what the fuck is this about? Is this worth my time? And you throw most of them over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And so he advocates for being, again, he's the guy that said, it's not how many books you get through, but how many get through to you. So he advocates for being selective with our time and selective with our intellect and picking out the good stuff. The Catcher in the Rye is not one.
Did you honestly not like?
Okay, let's talk about 12.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to ask you. That's what I was getting ready to ask you.
Yeah, that is the farthest. Look, I mean, if you're going to go read some books on, hey, X number of rules for life, is this best in class? Is it top 50? And it's not. I mean, go read Marcus Aurelius. Go read a Stoic.
Yeah.
Go read Epictetus. Go read Ethics by Aristotle. It's, I'm glad Peterson did it, and I'm glad a lot of people read it. But if they had asked me, there are 12 or 15, Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. I mean, there are dozens of books that I would put far, far ahead of it. They're in the same class, but he's like St. Jordan at this point. And frankly, he was on the Online Great Books podcast. He's on episode number 5. You can go listen. I just show with him. And he's a nice guy and he's a smart guy, but that's not the best in class. If you're talking about, how should people comport themselves? How should people act in such a way that leaves them better at the end of their day? How do people need to behave in such a way that leads them to fulfillment, not happiness, not joy, some sense of well-being. And, he takes a shot at it and I haven't. I mean, he's better than me. I haven't written that, even a crappy one. But that's not the best in class.
Yeah. I don't believe it's the best in class. I think that it just, for today's time, I just think there were some good things to take out of that. Being someone who was born in the 80s, raised in the 90s, I think that there were a lot of things that held true to how I was raised or my childhood that kind of shone through in that, and he was a parent at that time. And I think that maybe is why, I gravitated towards it, because I didn't think overall that it was some literary masterpiece, but I did think that there were about 20 to 25 good tips or, things that you could pull from that book that could somehow help you or help the basis of your life to build around.
Yeah, there's some bumper sticker stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
Clean your room. Okay, no shit, really? Okay. But something like the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, you could read that book end to end for 30 years. I have no doubt in my mind that if you're a thinking person, you could read that book end to end. Yeah, that book's extraordinary. Involved.
Well, we were just talking about Ben Franklin the other day because, I have his journals and everything. And then we were just saying, if you found somebody today that was outside with a kite like that, the cops would just come arrest him.
Right.
He would just get today's society. He'd just get arrested.
He'd be arrested. Man's a genius, but
I'm a huge, one thing that Ben Franklin said that I'm a huge fan of, and I was telling Jeff this, and it's something that I kind of live by as far as helping others. Is he was saying that it was when he moved. I don't know where he moved to, but it was where he moved. And he said that one of the first things he did when he got to a new neighborhood is he would go up and ask a neighbor for a favor. Because that way it then alleviates the pressure off the neighbor to have to ask him for something, but it builds community that way. And I think I tell Jeff that all the time. I think that's such a good point. I go out of my way to help people sometimes when around me, not strangers, but I believe that it builds a community like that because you owe somebody something at that point. And I can't remember I don't think that was in his autobiography, but it may have been. But I thought that was an interesting point because you don't see a lot of people do that today. A lot of people in today's world don't even know their neighbors.
Well, you kind of allude.
Franklin's just
go ahead.
Well, Franklin's book is just full of practical advice that's almost on the level of clean your room.
Yep.
He talks about he didn't feel like he was a very good writer, and he would read the newspaper, and then he would rewrite the better articles in his own words, and then his friends would read it and then read the original and let him know which one was better. He was trying to become a more and more clear, become a better writer and be able to communicate his ideas more and more clearly through writing. And he eventually is, Poor Richard's Almanac, and he's writing like these 9-word sayings that everybody remembers for all times. And that's one of the ways he did that. Well, if you're writing reports at work and your boss doesn't get you, you're trying to make an argument for why you need a raise. Well, maybe some practice in writing like Franklin did would help you, do that. I mean, he's just full of those practical tips. The Aurelius book, his Meditations, is not full of stuff that's quite that practical. It's more mindset stuff. But there are a lot of books. Like if we're going to sit down and it takes 4.5 hours to read the Peterson book, let's say, that's not the book I want you to spend 4.5 hours on. If that's the only one you'll spend it on, hey man, let's get it. Let's do it.
Well, it's, something, it's that old idea that something's better than nothing, but
Right.
I'm with you. The Peterson book, I read the first chapter of Tom's book and thought it was
Pretty
reasonably interesting, and I ended up buying it. And honestly, I didn't even finish it. I was just kind of like, I felt like, you're talking about Ben Franklin and kind of, like distilling something down to, just the most pure form. And that was, I think, one of my biggest problems with the Peterson book was I felt like so many of his lessons, he, took such a roundabout way of getting to it. It was just kind of like, just get to cut to the chase, man. Like, so yeah, and I honestly didn't even finish the book. So
Yeah. Every chapter he starts with an idea.
Yeah.
Then the middle of the chapter is just a fever dream. And then the last 3 paragraphs, he sums it up again.
Absolutely.
It's like, it's fine. It's fine. It ain't cool to shit on JBP, but hey man, wish him all the luck. But
no, I enjoyed
let's go
it.
read Ben Franklin's
I think
autobiography.
I think he did right by kind of cashing in on the YouTube fame that he got, and then making that book, and kind of, I mean, I think it's sold like over 2
Oh, he's got
million
to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Have you read his first book?
Yeah, he's got to do it.
Yeah,
I've read at it.
Yeah, it's a hard read.
Yeah,
That's a dry read.
I have read at it, so I'm not going to claim that I have read it, but I cracked the thing, and I'm like, this is. I mean, this is my approach to all books. So this is not, people that are listening are going to be like, oh, Hamburg is so hard on Peterson. This is my approach to all books. I'm like, this is not the best in class. Like, I've read Jung, and I've read Joseph Campbell, and those guys, I think, make Peterson's cases better than he does. Right? He's a Jungian. He likes to talk about symbolism and archetypes and all those things, and there are other people that have swum those waters a little better than he did, and don't bring as much of their personal baggage to it. So it's a big old long book. Hey, go read Carl Jung first. Go read a little Joseph Campbell and read Hero's Journey stuff. And gosh, what is it? Iron John, who wrote that? I want to look it up. I'm losing my mind. Bean, who wrote that? Iron John. I forgot. Oh my gosh, Robert Bly. There's a bunch of stuff that came before him. I think that's better at it, because that's always my approach. I'm not going to live long enough to read everybody's stuff. I wish I was.
I think the thing though is that I was happy with Jordan Peterson's book just because it got people interested in reading again. Because with
you bet.
Me getting out of the military and Jeff going back to school too after the military, we're both kind of around 18, 19, 20-year-olds all day, and they don't read. And so when you got guys like us that communicate with them daily, and we say like, because I mean we got a couple guys that have bought multiple books that I've said, and they've gone out and actually read these books and then messaged me about it and been like, hey man, thanks for the books. Or thanks for, saying something about the books. But I think the big thing that I was happy with more than that was that he took that YouTube following, made a semi-decent book out of it, and got people reading again that normally would not be reading.
Yeah. I mean, we'll take it. We'll take it. Now, for all you folks that have read 12 Rules for Life and that tickled an itch you had, go get the Ben Franklin autobiography. Go get the Ulysses S. Grant autobiography. Go read Caesar's War in Gaul. Go read Marcus Aurelius, and go get some of those guys that the best.
I'm really fascinated that you mentioned the Ulysses S. Grant biography. That's I'm a big I actually studied history my first go through in college, and so I really love history. Civil War history is one of the things I'm really into. Actually, one of the books I'm reading right now, rereading, is James McPherson's Battle Cry of Freedom, which is, if you're not familiar with that, that's, in my opinion, it's probably the best single volume treatment of the Civil War, and it's pretty in depth, very good. But Ulysses S. Grant, are you familiar with the backstory on his memoir? Writing it at the end of his life with cancer and whatnot.
Yeah. So he was a he was a career military man, and that was no path to riches. Then you couldn't get some guy job as a consultant or a contractor to the Pentagon when you retired, and then he was the president, and you probably really didn't even want that job, and that didn't pay very much either at the time. And he invested in some harebrained stuff that I think his son-in-law, had kicked off in some stock market speculating. I think he got wiped out in like the 1870s panics, and he was broke, and he had cancer, and he knew he wasn't going to make it. And he had a wife and I think a daughter still at home, and his wife was quite his junior. And Mark Twain said, "Hey man, I wonder what he called him. Ulysses, you need to write a book here." And he's like, "I don't want to." And he's like, "I'll publish it." And he pounded that thing out in the last months of his life. And there are pictures of him like sitting on his porch, all wrapped up in blankets and stuff, because he's dying of cancer and typing this book up. And he finishes it just a few months before he died. It was a huge bestseller. I think Twain's publishing company published it and set his wife and daughter up for the rest of their days. And he wrote an amazing book. It's a lot like Caesar's War in Gaul. They're both military men, and they just have this beautiful, tight, terse writing style. And they get their ideas across, their points across just immediately and clearly and cleanly. And they're a delight to read. And then they're about interesting people that do interesting things too. It's a great book.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The thing I think I appreciate most about Grant is there's really nothing superfluous to his writing. It's very, like you said, it's that very to the point. Nothing's embellished. It's Grant himself is just such a fascinating guy. I mean, you want to talk about a man that experienced just incredible ups and downs throughout his life, and I mean, the fact that he even became rose to become commander of the Union armies is, I mean, nothing short of a miracle when you look at I guess his career trajectory. Ends up becoming president, and then here at the end of his life, he writes a best-selling book that basically it saves his family essentially. He was an incredible story.
Yeah, and that Caesar's War in Gaul, go read that. If you go to archive.org, you could get this edition of it. It's an interlinear, they call it. So it's like English with the Latin underneath it. And he's kind of like Hemingway. He just got these real short, like see spot run kind of sentences, and but it's perfect. It's perfect. It's just perfect, tight Latin. And you can kind of read along in the Latin, and you'll find out that you know a little more Latin than you thought you knew. And there have been people have been learning Latin by translating Caesar's War in Gaul for 1,500 years. And you can go get that at archive.org and take a look at that yourself. It's pretty interesting. It's because he's a beautiful writer, and it shines through even if you don't even if your Latin ain't any good, you can see it. And how about take that, Jordan B. Peterson?
Yeah, what's funny is that with Latin being a dead language as it is, I speak Italian, or I try to speak Italian. We'll put it that way. I've always wanted to go back and learn Latin because a lot of the who was it? Dante's Inferno was written in Latin originally. And that's kind of how they ended up bringing out like the Italian language. When he rewrote that was one of the first books written in Italian, was Dante's Inferno.
Well, I got to be a total nerd here and shit on you. Dante's Inferno.
I may be wrong.
Yeah, it was written in like Middle Italian.
Okay.
So if you go read like Geoffrey Chaucer, that's like Middle English, and it's hard to follow. And like we speak English, it's still tough. It's like contemporary kind of with Chaucer's English there. So it don't read like New Italian. Yeah. But there is a lot of Latin in there, and everybody wrote in Latin. Aquinas wrote in it. I mean, everybody wrote in it. And, it's good. It's good to know if you can. And I don't know. I don't have hardly any Latin at all.
Yeah.
But if my brain was still wet and I wasn't as old, I would definitely go learn it.
learning a new language, I turned 30 last year. Italian has kicked my ass. And I took Spanish for 5 years, and Italian still kicks my ass daily.
Languages in general, you know, I mean,
they're hard.
I struggle with them. It's, and you know, neither one of us are stupid dudes either. I mean, we tend to pick things up pretty fast, and it's just one of those things, you know, when you're not immersed in it, it's hard.
Speaking of,
I'm from Catoosa, Oklahoma. And I struggle with English. It's been a lifelong struggle for me.
Just from the country of the countryside of Kansas.
That's I joke, you know, I got a cousin that speaks, you know, 3 languages and, you know, speaks 2.5 better than I do. So
we speak moonshine where I'm from. So exactly. We really don't have
he's really from the
I'm really
Appalachia, man. Like straight up. What?
No, speaking of,
I don't know.
Go ahead, Scott.
I just hope that, you know, folks that listen to this just maybe start to do a little triage, you know, with their time. Like, okay, I've got a spare hour here. You know, what am I going to do with it? Well, I can go read, I don't know, Twitter and go get lost in Twitter, or I can watch Boardwalk Empire or whatever. Or maybe I can go see what Julius Caesar had to say about kicking the shit out of the Gaul, you know? And, you know, I just hope people spend their time on this kind of a little more interesting things. Because if you do that hour by hour, you know, you do that 3 days a week for 4, 5, 6 years, you mess around, you end up being a pretty well-read person. And people are like, gosh, how did he do that? We just did a little bit at a time. It's just like this poor Jeff. It's just like the strength training, Jeff. You know, you go squat 3 times a week and you do it for 4 or 5 years. You just end up being strong. You know, you just accrue that strength. And when you read this stuff for years, you just kind of accrue that background, you accrue that knowledge, and next thing you know, you jacked around and you became one of these well-read people. What happened?
Yeah. You talk about, you know, this idea of triaging your time, or, you know, just time management in general. And it's, you know, that's one of those things, like if you look really closely at your life, you know, I mean, because everybody's busy. I'm not going to sit here and say that people aren't busy, but there are those hidden, you know, chunks of time throughout your day that, you know, you need to utilize. You know, you need to find ways to utilize. Like I know for like my school calendar, you know, I've basically got everything, all my classes, you know, basically when, you know, I got time mapped out for, you know, doing homework, whatever. And, you know, I found that I have, you know, these half hour or 25-minute chunks scattered throughout my week. And I just went in there and I put an alarm on my phone. And every time I got to one of those chunks where I had, you know, 20 minutes to burn before a class or, you know, whatever, I put it right in there. It's like, you will read. That's my alert. It's like, you will do something productive for this 20 minutes rather than sit on your phone and scroll through, you know, Instagram, or, you know, you can salvage a lot of time that way. And, you know, like you said, you know, reading, you know, it's not one of those things you have to sit down and, you know, devote a ton of time to. It's, you know, you can do 20 minutes here or 40 minutes before you go to bed, and you can actually find a lot of time across a period of a week that, you know, is productive.
Yeah. These, you know, your Apple iPhone now has a little, I don't know what they call it. What do they call it? Screen time.
Check screen time. Jeff and I talk about this
all the time.
I mean, I spend way too much time on this damn thing. I hate it, and it hates me. And, you know, if you could just cut, I'm not even going to tell people what my screen time is, because I'm humiliated by it. But, you know,
I want to know.
Almost everybody could pull some time out of that thing. One of the things about the screen time thing is it counts my podcast listening on it. And so it's, fucks it all up. But there's a little graph there, and you can even pluck the iTunes time out of it, or the podcast app time out of it.
Yeah,
but I find, you know, I have to use this stupid thing for work. It's too much.
Jeff is very good about not being on his phone. I am horrible about it. But I will say that since I got an Apple Watch, my screen time has gone down a ton, because I can just look at it and be like, yeah, I'm not going to look at my phone. Like, I know what time it is if I have something important pop up. I'm more of a social media butterfly than Jeff is. Jeff could care less about that. And I envy that every day.
I have ordered a light phone. Have you guys heard of the light phone?
Yes. The Palm. Did you actually order one?
I ordered one. Yeah. Light phone 2. Yeah, I should get it here in a couple weeks, apparently. And it's just a phone, and it's got like the Kindle Paperwhite kind of screen. And you can listen to podcasts on it. It has a alarm clock on it and like a Maps app, and it'll text and call, and that's it.
Everything you need right there.
Excited about
I was just talking about this a couple months ago, that if because I had read up on the Light 2, and I didn't know it was even out yet, but they had that, and they had one called like the Palm or something. But I was telling Jeff that I even thought about adding another line to my phone plan and getting like an old BlackBerry with the actual buttons on it, and just using it for call, text, emergencies, and leaving my iPhone at the house. But we've become so attached to everything. I mean, it's you lose your keys more often than you lose your phone, and that's crazy to me.
Right. Yeah. I really look forward to it. I had a Nokia 8210 at one point. Yeah. It was like the size of a pack of Hubba Bubba, and it rang when people called me, and I could call people on it. That's peak Perfect. Phone. It just went downhill from there.
That's old Nokia brick phones, right?
Yeah, but it's the little one.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it was like that big.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so good. It was so good. And I'm hoping my light phone feels and reminds me of my old Nokia 8210.
I've heard it's small.
Because I just spend too much time on that stuff.
Yeah, I've heard it's small. I want to see it. Yeah. I think
if you take a deck of cards, and if you take a deck of cards and cut the deck in half, it's like the size of a card, but like half the thickness of a regular deck of cards.
Yeah, see, that's awesome. I need something like that just to get me off my phone.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, I looked them up not so long, and they're inexpensive too. They're not that bad. What was it, like $349 or something like that?
I think they're $300.
Yeah, I thought I saw $349. I said $300 is about right.
Yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I definitely see the draw of that, but like, I mean, that's the one thing is, I mean, I don't know whether you're an iPhone or Android person, whatever your phone, it's just you've got so much power right at the tips of your fingers. Yeah. But like I said, it goes back to that time management, and that's part of the reason my screen time is, I mean, I think normally between an hour and 2 hours, and that's with, like listen to my meditation app, that sort of thing. So it's just, it's about time management too, just, and discipline, saying, hey, you know what, I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to scroll through Instagram for 20 minutes or, it's like those chunks of time add up, just like we're talking about, those chunks of time when you're reading. It's,
yeah, mine's more like 7 hours.
Yeah.
Mine's not.
And nobody's like, and nobody's ever like, I really enjoyed that time I spent with my phone.
Yeah, no.
No. So, and they're the people that are designing these apps and the phones are designing those things, not really to serve us, but to maximize our engagement with the device. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're not smarter than us, but they spend all of their time and billions of dollars on making sure that we spend more and more time with that device. That's a fight we can't win.
Yeah.
I'm just a dude over here trying to have a family and have a life. Like I said, I got 41 more years. And if these people are just devoting all that brain power and all that money to that, I can't win that. I've got to get rid of that phone. So I got, 2 more weeks of it.
Yeah, I find that
I'm excited.
The time that I get away from my phone though is the gym. I try not to look at it when I'm in the gym because I do ever have all my workouts on the watch, and then the sauna. I probably when Jeff's not with me and I'm in the sauna, I can get through 30 minutes of reading like it's nothing. And then the other time that what do you do?
But what do you do when Jeff is with you in the sauna?
We talk.
We shoot the shit.
I sit on his lap and talk about things.
Okay.
Tell me what you want for Christmas.
Right.
Yeah. Just normal everyday things.
That's right.
But that, and then, one thing I was doing this semester, and it's not to be disrespectful to professors, but in some of our larger lectures that were just almost useless, I would just read during lectures. I would just sit. I mean, I read almost every lecture, didn't I?
Maximize your time if you're not getting anything out of it.
I read in almost every lecture, and we had good professors. It's just a lot of time those lectures are worthless. Jeff and I basically self-teach. Like he teaches.
No, wait a
me
minute.
everything
Okay, wait a minute. The good professors, the lectures are worthless. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Well, okay. How
they can't?
Let me take.
They
that
can't
back.
be both.
No, let me take it back. What did we say? They're great people. Okay, professors. We'll put it that way. They're good people.
Oh, I'm sure they're super nice guys.
Yeah.
You know, and ladies, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Hey, listen, kids, if you're listening right now, drop out of college. Let's get to work. Come on. Let's get to work. Let's read some books. Let's get to work.
Waste of your time.
We've said that before too.
Oh hell.
Poor Jeff. He's going to college. What are you studying, man?
Biochemistry. I want to go to med school. So.
Biochemistry.
Yep.
Yeah. We're over here trying to be doctors.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
I hopefully I already have a degree, so hopefully I'll take the MCAT about a year from now. We'll see if everything goes to plan, I guess. So, and then just due to the fact that most the way application processes go, I probably will end up finishing my degree and then entering into med school. So that's if everything goes to plan and if any med schools want me.
Yeah.
So you'll enter med school maybe in the fall of 2020. You'll do 4 years of that, internship and a residency, and then maybe a fellowship. You'll get out just in time for the nationalized healthcare, and then you'll work for the U.S. Postal Service as a physician.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're okay with that. Our backup plan is opening a vineyard in Sicily if this all goes to hell.
I've never heard of that.
Backup. Before, why is that? What the fuck is wrong with you guys? Why is that not plan A?
Hey, Jeff doesn't know yet. That is my plan A. I've been asking how often do you think I look at homes in Italy?
I have no idea. More than you should.
Once a week?
More than you should.
Yeah, more than I should. I'm always looking up. I'm like, man, I might buy this today. We'll see. This one's only $1.
Silvini won't let you in, so stop looking. he'll torpedo your boat
for the rest of my life.
Right?
Really?
Yeah, I'll probably be in Kansas the rest of my life. I think I like it here.
Yeah, I like Kansas.
Yeah,
good
Kansas
people.
All right.
I like Kansas.
I always end up back here for some reason.
Oklahoma's nice.
I
did AIT down in Lawton.
Right?
Yeah.
Lawton's not good.
No, it's not. It's a bad town.
Yeah, Lawton,
bad
is
town.
Where Fort Sill is, and the artillery tech schools down there, and they have the worst weather in the world, and the temperature swings are probably something like 140 total degrees in the course of a year, and it's rough and tough down there, man.
Yeah, that and Alaska are by far the two worst places I've ever lived.
I've never lived in Oklahoma, so I can't really say.
I wouldn't call it living. I did.
We're full. It's fine.
We're full.
They got rid of me in Louisiana, so I don't think I'm pretty sure nowhere will take me. So
he's stuck in Kansas now. He's staying.
Yeah, if all you guys are listening, Oklahoma's full. Turn around. It's fine.
All right, good to know.
Gosh, I've recorded. I don't know. This is podcast number 5, I think, today. And
you've been grinding, dude.
I told Jeff I thought it was going to be your number 3 because I was on your. I saw on Instagram Live last night. You're like, yeah, I got like 3. I'm recording tomorrow, and I was like, I texted him immediately. I was like, Jesus, he's just knocking him out.
Well, I fire up with Matt Reynolds in the morning. Thursday mornings, Reynolds and I record 3 episodes of Barbell Logic. We normally do 3 and then a Q&A. And those are short. Those come out on Saturdays. There's, if it's 10, 15-minute show, something like that, the Saturday show. So that'll take us about 3 hours. Then I did a couple of guest appearances. And Thursdays normally I record most of the day. And I like it. Podcasting is one of the favorite things I've ever done.
Yeah, that's how Jeff and I started.
Doing the shows with Matt.
Our big thing is I had
I
had kind of like looked at doing my own podcast for a while. And then I did that whole I'll get to it. I'm going to do it. And Jeff and I did this thing where we were meeting 2 to 3 times a week at my place at about 5 a.m. to have coffee. And we always just talk about, different things, usually history and our own personal politics kind of things that we keep off air. And he looked at me, he's like, man, we need to do a podcast. And I was like, well, actually, look at all this stuff that I've been planning. And so we just kind of hit the ground running. And I've actually been pretty overjoyed by how the many positive responses we got. And I always knew there were going to be people that gave me positive responses, but I think I checked just before we went on, and I'm in that phase right now to where I'm checking how many downloads I have a day, kind of phase. And we're a little over a week, and we just hit over 600 downloads today. So,
I read somewhere that the average podcast on iTunes gets 300 a month, I think is what I read. So you guys are probably in the top quarter,
Yeah. Well, I showed Jeff, I'm in one of those Facebook group podcast things, and somebody put on there the other day, they're like, yeah, we've been podcasting for 6 months.
Yeah,
he said 6 months, and I have 500 downloads. And I was like, wow, really? And then another guy came on there and was like, man, congratulations. I've been doing it for 18 months and I'm right over 400. And I was like, whoa, okay. I was like, man, so I guess I'm swinging above what I thought I was going to.
Like I said, I didn't really even know what to expect getting into it. And it really, it wasn't about like downloads or whatever. It was really, I think for me, the whole idea of doing a podcast was more about like having a kind of a creative outlet.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been really, really interesting, really gratifying. Tom, I'm lucky. Tom does most of the heavy lifting. I mean, so I just kind of get to come in and have fun with it. And it's really nice for me. So
we both talk a lot. And I think that was a big thing too, is that we were having these conversations and we were like, man, we need to record these. We need to talk to other people. We need to get, and it turned into that and then worked out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it, at least.
Yeah. Podcasting is, it's an interesting medium. It's so intimate. I speak into this microphone and then record it and then release the thing. And then people listen to it when they're alone, and they put the earbuds in their ear and you talk right into their ear hole.
Yeah.
And at this point at Barbell Logic, we've done almost 200 episodes. And, these people come up to me and they think they know me. And I guess they kind of do. And it's just so intimate. You can develop a relationship with the listener like probably no other mass medium. It's sort of like sitting down with someone and actually doing a back and forth conversation. It's probably the closest you can get. And, if the show's good, if you have important things to say and you can say it in an entertaining way, people develop a tribe around it. It's really interesting. And, it's pretty gratifying that the Barbell Logic show has been growing a lot every month since July 4th of 2017, and it just keeps on trucking. And I do the Online Great Books podcast too. That one comes out once a week, and it's been growing as well. Not as fast and not as much. It's too nerdy, probably. It's not as good a show either, frankly.
I think Online Great Books is good. I actually enjoy the memes that you guys post more than anything. I told him, when I told Jeff to go follow, I was like, they do these memes that are like witty, that a lot of people aren't going to get. And I was like, I find them hilarious. Like when I'm scrolling, I'm like, man, that's actually pretty funny. And I do think that it's a certain niche of people. I don't think a lot of people get those jokes.
Yeah, if you go to Instagram and follow at Online Great Books, that's our Instagram account, and our meme master Joshua Warsham serves up the spiciest of all possible classic books memes. He's a goddamn genius. He really is. We had a little Zoom meeting early this morning, and he was making notes. I'm like, what are you writing down there? And he's like, oh, I want to do a meme about this. And you've seen the meme go around about Joe Rogan. It's like, dude, have you tried DMT?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to do a Joe Rogan. Dude, have you tried OGB? About how the OGB is like DMT and will expand your mind. But he's super clever, and that account's picking up speed.
I think it's just.
And then I do a bunch of podcast appearances too. I love it.
No, we were super. I told Jeff I was super happy to have you on because I was just, I get in these little things where I get stuck on just certain people in life that I follow and I find interesting in things, and then I've been following you for a while now, and then with Barbell Logic, it's been almost 2 years, and then Online Great Books, and then with the whole the Art of Manliness stuff and what's the Strenuous Life, all of those, I found that it was something that was helpful in general across the board, and you don't see that a lot. A lot of people in the social media community and the community that we stay in now, I wouldn't say they're selfish or narcissistic, but they're very much not.
I would.
Yeah. They don't want to help as much, and when you find knowledge and things that when people are trying to give out knowledge, I believe it's ignorant not to take it, or at least, look into it. And that's kind of what got me stuck on that. I was really ecstatic. I told Jeff, I literally screenshotted as soon as you and I were messaging each other, and I was like, yeah, we got to get him on. I was like, we got to go to Tulsa. And then you were like, I was like, we got to go to Tulsa, man. We got to go.
I told you guys, Oklahoma's full. You can't come. We'll have to do it remote.
Oh, I can't even come. I can't even come down to Kane's Ballroom for a weekend and tie one on. Shoot a podcast.
Maybe only if it's Western swing music. They play some shit there that's not that.
That's a shame.
Is Oklahoma part of the red dirt country movement?
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Yeah,
that's where that comes from. Yeah. You're talking about Art of Manliness. And I have a home Online Great Books group, and we meet on the third Thursday of every month, and we discuss, whatever the book is that month. And this month it's Hamlet. Last month it was Erasmus and Luther debating free will. But this month dense. Is Hamlet, and Luther's dense. Ugh. And Brett McKay is in that group. And Brett's like, hey, man, more people got to do this stuff, And he's like, you've got to start a business to get more people to read these books. I'm like, yeah, that's what I need is another job. He's like, no, you got to. And we, I borrowed or stole liberally from the Strenuous Life and how he had done that, and added some other stuff to it, and stole a lot from the Great Books movement in the 40s and 50s. And built that Online Great Books website, and so Brett has been a big supporter of what we're doing at Online Great Books, and then Barbell Logic too, and lots of our Online Great Books members are Strenuous Life people, and it's pretty interesting how all those groups have, I don't know, maybe inbred, I don't know.
So with the Online Great Books, how many podcasts have you guys run on with that?
I don't know how many we've done so far. It's a weekly show.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how many we've done. I got started last year. It wasn't weekly until this year. I did them when I could. And I was running another business. And I actually sold it late in the year last year and freed up a lot of time, and then made the show weekly. And we've been trying our best to keep that weekly schedule. And I don't know. We probably up to maybe 25 or 30 episodes at this point.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, man, I can't wait to get caught up on those now. So I'm pretty excited to go check that out. So
the weekly schedules are definitely hard.
Oh God.
To actually get in and sit down and record. One of the big things, Jeff and I started with, we were actually just going to do just him and I. We weren't sure if we were going to have guests. Started out as like a 2 microphone kind of thing. And I'm actually glad this one's going so well, because we weren't sure how we were going to do, being remote and away, and it's going well. But our big thing was that there's only so much that 2 people can talk about over time. It's a good comparison, but we've had some guests on that have been just absolutely phenomenal. And I just find the podcasting portion of it's different to me than it is social media. Like I don't see social media as a cancer, but it kind of is. And I believe that it's taken away our ability to communicate and our ability to really have raw feelings. And I believe podcasting has kind of brought that back. I really like being able to sit across from somebody and talk to somebody about something and see their facial expression and see and hear their stories, and a uniqueness to them that you don't really get. I mean, some of the guests that we've had, I've had conversations with them online, but you don't get to see not even who they are, but their story and how they respond to things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we've gone completely astray from in society.
Well, and to piggyback off that too is, I mean, I think that's been the biggest surprise for me running this podcast is I didn't realize the amount of satisfaction I was going to personally get out of it, having a chance to, you know, connect and meet with so many different people and, you know, hear just a bunch of different stories, hear a bunch of different perspectives. And it's been, like I said, I think personally for me, I mean, you know, it's, I've kind of been of the mindset since Tom and I decided to do this that, I was doing this podcast for me, and I really do feel like I get something out of it. And hopefully if somebody else does too, that I think all the better.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to rant.
Please do.
I do barbell logic in particular, specifically for me. And people will email and they're like, hey, you know what you should do? And I'm like, you know what you ought to fucking do? Like, I don't do this, I do the show for me. And then if they enjoy listening to it, that's very flattering and that's a blessing and that's wonderful. But I can't do it for them because I can only do what I do. I can only do what meets my needs. And if I do something else, it's going to be artificial. It's going to be stilted and it's going to be weird. I'm pretty good at doing what I need to do, but I'm not going to be very good at doing what they need me to do. And so, we were lucky enough that the thing that Matt and I do for ourselves there has some appeal, which is great. But if we had to change it for it to get better, or if we had to change it in a substantial way for people to like it, I don't think it would be any good. I don't think we could even make the change, whatever that change was. I don't even think we could make it. So when people are like, you know what you ought to do? I'm like, doesn't matter. I get mad sometimes, but it really doesn't even matter. I'm not even capable of doing anything different.
Yeah.
We record 3.5 hours of content a week. Like how could I be other than what I am for that 3.5 hours? I can't even do it. I just told a little bit of the story. Like I sold my main business in last year. That's a part of my life. And we've spoken about it a lot on the show lately. And I've gotten a couple emails like, hey, we're tired of hearing about it. Well, tough shit.
Stop listening.
It's a big deal. Yeah. My life is going to forever be divided in just in a few pieces. Like before I got married, after I got married, before I had kids, after I had kids, before I sold that business, and after I sold that business. It's forever going to be that way. And sorry, guys, I can't help it. Sorry. There you go.
Yeah.
we have to do those shows for ourselves.
I kind of look at it as like, it's like almost like the catch-22 is as soon as you stop doing it for yourself, it loses that authenticity and it de facto somehow becomes worse. I mean, like you can't have both. You can't do it for somebody else and have it be authentic and what's the word I'm looking for?
Authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. Authentic.
It is authentic.
Yeah. It is art, right? It's not a sculpture and it's not a painting, but it is art. It is an act of creation. We turn the microphones on and then at the end, then we turn them off. And when in between something was created, and you can't create art by committee, or wait a minute, you can't create good art by committee. My medium here is, going on rants and talking about the things I talk about. And if somebody wants to change that, the art's not going to be the same and it's probably not going to be any good. And, it's probably, when you say art, people think about all that snooty shit, that was in that humanities class you took, but it really is art. It's an act of creation. We come in here, the three of us sit down at an appointed time and something new and original has arisen out of it. And hopefully the world's better off for it. And, if that ain't art, I don't know what it is. And, it's a touchy thing, I don't want to screw with it too much. Every time it happens, I'm astounded. I'll listen to some of our shows. I'm like, man, that's interesting. I laughed a few times. We said something important and maybe somebody got helped there. and then hopefully a whole lot of people are entertained for for 48 minutes. And man, I'm loath to screw with that. That's a big deal.
Well,
it is art though, and I've been calling it that lately. One thing that I always that I'm doing now is I'm getting those computer generated transcripts of our shows, and I'm going back and editing them and listening to our shows again while I edit. And I think that's really where it sticks out to me a lot, because you start reading quotes that you're saying, like I'm breaking it down into basically like he said this, she said this, she said this, whatever, and going back and doing the transcripts my way because I'm anal about things. And there's really some things that we have said and some funny things, but there's stories that have been told in the short time that we've been recording that have been like, wow, like that's, I won't go as far to say profound, but I think they're important conversations to have.
Well, it was really funny. Actually, I was sick last week, and Tom was, doing a bunch of work with the podcast, and he emailed me probably like Wednesday last week. And he said, hey, this is what we got coming down the pipe on our episode list. And I pulled it up and I looked through it, and I knew, because we talked about it all before, but I hadn't seen everything just kind of like stacked one right next to the other. And I looked at that and I was like, holy shit, like that really is incredible. Like that's something I want. Those are things I want to hear about. Those are things I want to learn about. And I think, like I said, the fact that, having that revelation was just like, that's what this is about, is that self-discovery. And
yeah, there's self-expression in it. I mean, that's what we're doing. Since it isn't scripted, since there's not a lot of show prep, and it's three personalities in this case sitting down in front of these microphones. I mean, it is self-expression, and it's interesting. And we've had guests on, and we turn the mics on, and they get weird.
Yes.
He calls it red light fever, and it's really interesting. Like I have a friend that I talk about on the show all the time, Ray the plumber. And Ray's been a business mentor of mine for years and years. He's 66 years old. He sold his plumbing practice, 4 or 5 years ago. And I was like, I've got to have Ray on, because he has all these stories and all this wisdom, and he's funny, and man, it's going to be great. And he's just country's homemade soap, and people are going to love him. And we turned the microphones on, and he clammed up. And he just got weird as fuck. It's like, Ray, what happened? We couldn't use it.
What do I do with my hands?
It's funny too, but sometimes the inverse of that happens too, though. Don't you see? Like,
yeah.
Have you ever gotten somebody, and like, I remember actually it was one of the first ones Tom and I shot with another person, and I remember walking in, and like the first like 5-10 minutes when we were kind of getting everything set up, it was just like, it was tense.
It was eerie.
I was like, this is going to be an absolute piece of shit. And it was absolutely incredible, because like, it was like once it took about probably 5 minutes, and we got into that episode, and was like a flip, just a switch flipped. And it was incredible. Like you kind of never know. I don't think you ever really know what you're going to get. Do you? I mean, you podcast a hell of a lot more than we have. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think most guests aren't any good. If they were going to be good, they would have their own show. I mean, really?
Yeah, no.
I mean, there are a lot of smart people that have a lot of interesting things to say, but that doesn't necessarily mean they can do good pod, And I think most guests aren't going to be terribly good. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth, and you have to carry them on your back, and wring all the jewels and the treasures out of them, and hopefully get them to laugh and get them to roll. But it's tough. It's tough, and it depends. It kind of depends on what the standard of the show is and what the show's supposed to be like. But somebody like Joe Rogan is just fascinating, because he gets he doesn't edit his shows. Our Barbell Logic shows aren't edited either. Unless somebody has like a choking fit or something like that, that we cut out. But, he manages to get good shows, or at least interesting shows, out of virtually every single person that sits down there. Yeah. And, man, he's got a talent at that. Brett is a fantastic interviewer. The Art of Manliness show, his interviews are always come in great. But, in the stuff that we talk about, books or barbells or small business, in case of Barbell Logic, they're not all great. Not everybody can just rap and express themselves and say interesting and insightful things, on the fly. And we don't want our show to be scripted because they're scripted. You can smell it a mile away. And so we do minimal prep, and we normally have a show title, or at least a working title for the show. And I say, welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm Scott, and this is Matt. And then we do it. And
that sounds about like what we do.
Come out, man.
We have literally, I was sitting here typing into my file beforehand, and about probably 15 minutes before the show, and I looked up at Jeff and I go, what should we call this episode?
Right.
And I said,
call it Barbell Logic.
We'll just put Barbell Logic till we figure out something. We don't know. And even last night, I told Jeff, I was like, getting him on the show is a big deal. I think, we should do some questions. And of course, I didn't do any questions because I'm lazy. And so Jeff writes out some questions. We haven't even looked at it yet, to be honest. We tried the scripted thing, and it doesn't work for us.
It never hurts to have a parachute either, though, because you never know. Like it just goes back that you never know what you're going to get. So, if it is going to, take a left-hand turn,
it's good
down the shitter, you might as well have something you can at least semi fall back on.
One of the episodes
on our show, if it takes a left-hand turn, I want to follow it. I want to not be jarred by that, and I want to chase that out and see where it goes.
Yeah.
The problem is like if you resist it, it's kind of like improv. We want to go yes and we want to go to the end of where that is, because there's almost never a turd at the end of that. It's almost always something really interesting, because that's where the consciousness of the people that were in the room at the time wanted to go.
Uh-huh.
And I normally don't want to put my thumb on that and squish it,
Yeah, we try not to either.
We've even sat down and said, we really should do more show prep, and then consciously decided, no, we're not going to, because we don't want it to be, we want it to remain conversational. We don't want it to ever, not be conversational, not sound like interesting people that have interesting things to say organically. And so we've avoided it. There have been times when Matt's like, don't tell me what we're going to talk about. And I've done the same. And we just go. And, I think people can hear it. They want it. When we're surprised by where the conversation goes, the listener is too.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And so I think that's good.
We have one episode where I don't know that where we thought it was going to go, to be honest. I really don't. And it's become one of our more popular episodes. I mean, it has over 100 downloads by itself in this week, but it's, we sit down, we introduce ourselves, we introduce the guest, and literally this is all that was said. So Jeff goes, tell us, how'd you get started? And that was it. It went on this ride that I just was like, what is happening? But it was great. It was hands down great. But he is a healer and he talked about being a healer during different centuries of his life. And it was awesome.
About communing with his favorite plant, and it was wild.
It was great. And he happens to be like I adore Andy. I think he's a great guy, but it was not expected. I thought we were going to talk about Reiki. I thought we were going to talk about massage therapy. And the next thing you know, we're talking about, just some crazy stuff, man. And I was like, I was loving it. I was eating it. It was gold. It was literally audio gold. And we get done, and I'm like, and he talked and talked and talked, and we get done, and I was like, Andy, that was awesome, dude. That was great. And he goes, yeah, I didn't even get to talk about my woodworking. And I was like, well I said, well, we'll bring you back on, no problem. He goes, okay, how about tomorrow? I was like, what?
I've got a whole line of hardwood butt plugs I want to talk about. Like you just never know where these people are going to go, man.
Well, and that's
good.
And
I don't want to squash that.
We were saying earlier when you were talking about, you don't want to change your show. We had, when we recorded before we were dropping and putting everything out, I put a questionnaire thing up on Instagram that basically said, hit us with some topics or some questions that you might find or might find interesting. And that'll probably be the last time I ever do that. One of the ones I got, and it was seriously, it was like, hey, I got 3 questions for you. One was like, talk about you and Jeff being not married at 30 and dating relationship advice or something. Then I was like, okay. The second one was
that was me. I put that.
That was you. And the second one was something else. And then the third one was eating ass. Yes or no?
See question number 1.
Yeah. And I just was like, and they were dead serious. And I was like, man, yeah, this will be the last time I think I put the Instagram question out.
Yeah. Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to.
I mean, but next week we're doing the eating ass episode. So
you should call that woodworker on, the woodworker active release therapy guy. It's like in my third century.
I just think a lot of people don't realize this, and I didn't realize until I started getting into it and started doing. Do you guys do advertising at all?
We do.
Yeah. And so that we've started getting into doing some as far as literally the baseline. We have some people here that we were talking to. A guy owns a cryo spa who's been super influential in helping us and doing things. But I did not realize starting this out, the work that goes into actually having a semi-professional podcast. And actually, I think that a lot of people think that we just sit down and kind of record and don't realize a lot of the things that go into it behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's a lot. You know, and I'd even messed up our audio to begin with. And I luckily had a guy that we've hired as our sound engineer. He lives out in California, but a former soldier of mine. And I messaged him, like, hey, dude, we got our podcast up. People are saying the content's great, but it sounds like it's like,
yeah,
it doesn't sound great. And so he went in, redid everything for me. So I've been super lucky to have that, but I've learned so much in the past month about putting together media kits to send out to people, editing, which I still am not good at. We don't edit any of our stuff as far as cut out stuff. We don't do any of that. We just edit the sound. We're not big believers on editing out anything ever.
It's raw.
Yeah, it's raw. We just go raw. If we had the capability, we probably do it live. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, we've done some live shows and they're a great deal of fun. We'll be doing one, I think. I'm losing my mind here. The second week of July, I think Reynolds and I are going to do a live one on Saturday. And we'll be doing some live from the Starting Strength Coaches Conference on the first weekend of August. And we'll have an live audience and stuff. Those are a lot of fun. And we have recently started selling some advertising, and we're only advertising. I'm not going to do Sherry's Berries. We're not going to do stamps.com. We're not going to do any of that stuff. So there are people that make things that we like and that are made in the United States. And so it's Dominion Strength. They make the best weightlifting belts you can buy right now, I think. And like Micro Gains, they make micro plates. And one of the things I told Reynolds, like, hey man, we need to take advertising, because, he's like Trump. He wants everything to be big and he wants revenue. And he's like, everything has to be huge. And I'm like, listen, advertising's fine, but they can't tell me what I can't say on the show. I mean, I work a little blue. And I yell at people sometimes, and, we need to be able to do that. And hopefully we'll stay with that. But we have always been our own biggest advertising clients, Starting Strength online coaching, Barbell Logic online coaching, and Online Great Books have been, we put the show together because Matt and I had things we wanted to say, but we also had products that we wanted to justify and build trust in with the public. And we've always kind of advertised our own stuff, our own projects on there. And it's worth doing for just that. But doing 3 shows a week with audio quality and the hosting costs that we have, it was time to do that. And if like you were talking about the audio quality, if you listen to our early shows, the audio quality has gotten so much better. That's Milton the cat. Audio quality has gotten so much better over the years, and it comes with a cost. The stuff's cheap to do. It's cheaper than buying a radio station, but it does pile up. And we've been lucky so far. All of our advertisers are like what we do and like who we are. And if they don't, then go buy advertising from somebody else, I reckon.
Yeah, I think that's our big thing.
Show.
yeah, I don't think that we're going to compromise who we are to get advertising. I don't think it's that big of a deal to us because we didn't start out being like, we're doing this. I feel like a lot of people are starting out in today's podcasting to try to make money, and I would love to make money off of it. I'm not saying that, but that wasn't our initial thing. And our thing was, we started out, people started hearing our shows, or catching wind that we were doing it. And then we started getting messages like, hey, interested in meeting up, want to talk about the show, things like that. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't think that we would ever be in a position to where we compromise who we are to make money for somebody else. I just don't think that's something I'm interested in doing. Like if somebody tries to tell me that I can't say fuck on my own show, then you're probably not. I really don't need your money.
Yeah. We, I don't know if you listen to our show, I don't know. People don't contact me to go to lunch. I'll tell you that. How about that?
we get contacted to go to lunch. That's for sure. They want to buy us beers.
Yeah.
Hang out. They want to buy us beers and hang out. That seems to be the trend we're going towards.
I tell people if they recognize me, and our show's got some pretty significant numbers at this point. And
yes, it does.
Reynolds gets recognized all the time. And I do too, but I tell people on the show, if you recognize me, wave. I want to talk to you. And it's worked so far.
Well, I'll remember that if I'm ever down in your neck of the woods.
I told Jeff he was going to like
Oklahoma's full.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing.
We'll go around. We'll go Missouri, Arkansas to get to Texas.
Yep. Arkansas needs you. Everybody knows
Arkansas needs a lot of things.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But I told Jeff he was going to love you to death because it was just I've always thought you were kind of a especially watching you on Instagram Live for so long. You're kind of like a no bullshit personality, and it's always been straight shooting. And we're kind of like that too. We don't really. I don't think that we really care what people think about us, and I think that's a good quality to have in a world where everyone's trying to impress everybody 24/7. So I was telling him last night about you smoking the pipe, and I was like, I got to get a pipe, man.
You were just telling me about that right before we shot.
Because I have a humidifier, and we went, we went to a local cigar lounge just opened up here, and we went the other day, and I was showing him some Davidoff Churchills, and he got some, and I saw you smoking the pipe, and I was like, I should get a pipe, man.
Yeah, the pipe is the pipe is superior, I think. One, you can smoke the pipe cooler so it doesn't burn and scorch the leaf. So you don't taste the ash like you do in the cigar. Two, you don't have to, it doesn't take so damn long. You can put a little in there or a lot or whatever. You can smoke two, smoke one, whatever. You can spend 4 minutes or you can spend 20. Cigar is a commitment. Yeah, which is good in and of itself sometimes, right? But pipe doesn't take as long. 3, it's cheaper. Like the most expensive pipe tobacco is probably a tenth of what cigar smoking is. And 4, the room note's good. Like if you smoke most pipe tobacco, the people around you love the way it smells.
Yeah,
and you're a lot more welcome around people when you're smoking a pipe than a cigar.
Yeah, we were at a brewery the other night, and I was like, man, do you want to go out in the patio and smoke a cigar? And he goes, can we? And I go, yeah, you're right. We probably can't.
Yeah,
right. They smell disgusting. They're terrible.
They do. They smell like cat piss.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Cat piss.
Yeah, I think cigars smell like cat piss. I really do.
I don't see it, but okay.
I think they smell like ammonia. Yeah, I do. I do not like the smell of cigars. I love taste. I love smoking cigars. I do not like. It's the same with cigarettes. I don't like the smell of cigarettes either, though.
Oh, cigarettes are terrible, man.
Yeah, not a big cigarette fan. Pipe, so I could do that.
Yeah, it's the pipe for me. It's the pipe.
I think I just need to stay away from it all.
Yeah, Jeff was juuling for a while.
Oh, for a long while. I used to chew. And then I juuled for about a year, not quite a year.
Probably
about 8.
No, not
8 months.
About half a year.
And I finally
I heard that leads to bedwetting. Is that true?
Well, I haven't wet the bed.
Well, he was doing that before he started juuling, so we don't know. We can't.
Oh, I see. It stops it. It's a cure.
Yeah, awesome. That's what it was. Because you get so wound up on having that jewel in your hand all the time, you don't think about wetting the bed.
I'll tell you what though. I mean, like I will say this, being chewing for as long as I did, it was actually really great to help me. It was a hell of a lot easier to quit juuling than it was to quit chewing Copenhagen for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just was like making that transition. And then Tom was constantly on my ass about my vaping, and
he would actually get physically angry at me because I'd be like, stop juuling.
And I'd be like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. He would get so mad about it. I was like, dude,
I'd be like, tend to your own shop, son. How's that for your Jordan Peterson advice?
And I would
make your own bed.
Yeah. But I it's been about a month, 6 weeks now. So a lot of gum.
Yeah. Well, for Jeff though, I don't think it was the nicotine. It was the
habit.
The habit of constantly doing it. Cause you would just notice that he would be doing it just out
mindlessly,
of out of a habit.
Yep. So,
I mean, I'm sure the nicotine had something to do with it, but
without a doubt.
I think it's easier to quit because you don't have that fiberglass cutting up your lips and stuff. Chewing's a dangerous thing, man.
Hell yeah, man. That was one thing I wish I'd never. That was one of my. My dad chewed when I was growing up, and I swore I would never ever I would never chew, and it was one of those things I picked up in the Army, and
he moved to Louisiana where girls won't talk to you unless you chew, so he had to.
Hey, baby, you got a can of Skull on you?
Were you guys at Fort Polk?
No. I did. Yeah, I've been to Polk, but actually, I moved down to Louisiana for work a few years ago. I was working for a pharmaceutical company, so Louisiana, it's a different world down there.
Yeah, I've done a rotation of JRTC down there, and then I OC'd 1 year down there. Polk is what's that town called? Is it Leesville or Lees?
Yeah, I think Leesville, Leesburg.
Like Jesus Lord, they got a cool Walmart.
Ghetto. Everywhere in Louisiana is ghetto.
Bum a dip off of a girl named Thibodeau. Great.
Yeah, we're not big Louisiana fans around here.
The food's good. They got great food. I'll say that.
Okay. I love Louisiana. And, when I was a kid, there were a lot of eclectic places, you go to New Orleans, and that's New Orleans, man. But if you got like teleported from Houston to LA, you might not know the difference depending on how it smelled that day.
Yeah.
Like the country is getting less eclectic. There are these sort of on-ramp, expressway on-ramp communities like most of Dallas, and you see an Applebee's and a Home Depot, and it's just so much of the country is kind of becoming homogenized, and people move around and destroy their communities when they move, and then everything's just like a big mushy homogenous thing now. And I really liked it when Decatur, Arkansas was Decatur, and Louisiana was Louisiana, and St. Paul was St. Paul, and it's what we were talking about, the Ulysses S. Grant autobiography. He went to West Point, in what, I don't know, 1830s, I don't know, pre-trains. And he said when he got there, people's dialects were so thick that they had a hard time understanding each other. And then and he says in the book, by the time the Civil War came, there were trains and people moved around a lot, and those dialects had largely disappeared. And now, like I used to know, I'd hear somebody, I'd go to a rodeo and I'd hear somebody, I'd be like, they're from Talala.
Yeah.
Like you could hear it. Like that, her country ass is from Talala, and then that girl's from Sequoia. You could hear it, and that stuff's going away, and the regional food's going away, and there's red dirt country, but there ain't much else. I mean, there's red dirt, and there's Austin, and then there's Bakersfield, but it's and Nashville's gone. Like everything's homogenous. It makes me sad.
They're just going to rename Nashville to Bacheloretteville. That's coming soon.
Well, you know what? It's almost not their fault. Like popular music has been taken over by hip hop influenced music. And if you don't want to listen to dance and hip hop influenced music, where are you going to go? Well, you end up at Nashville, and that market reality has crowded out the honky tonk music that I danced to at street dances in the 80s, you know, and what people danced to in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s, and where I'm from at the Canes Ballroom. And it's still around. There's still a dance hall circuit around here. You know, you can go to Knuckleheads and Kansas City and Canes here and Billy Bob's in Fort Worth. It's still around, but it's dying.
It is dying.
You know, and it's dying not because people don't buy the music, and they don't, but it's dying because the culture that supported it doesn't exist anymore. The working class, normal people that worked and got dirty for a living, then showered up and went to the dance hall are gone. Those people aren't around anymore. And they all moved to town. They all moved to Houston. You know, Houston and Dallas drained Oklahoma when the oil boom busted out in the 80s. And we hadn't recovered from it yet, although we are full. We haven't quite recovered from it yet. The culture has changed, and I think we're worse off for it.
Yeah.
The people on the West Coast would say that we're a bunch of dumb fucking hillbillies, and we're better off if we moved to town. But I kind of like my chicken fried steak and my nice people and sitting on the porch and being left fuck alone.
Yeah,
I hear that.
I can get with that. You know, that's a big thing out here with us. With Kansas is really looking for family med doctors to move out to like West Kansas, and the girlfriend, she's from Hays, Kansas, which is out in the middle of nowhere, absolutely middle of nowhere. And I love it out there. Actually, it's a different world. If you drive from here to Denver, it's a total different world. You wouldn't think places like that exist. I drove through Canada about 7 years ago, and that's what it reminds me of. It's about like driving across Texas, though. Texas is the same way.
You want to talk about that band, though, like Western Kansas, Western Oklahoma, Western Texas. I mean, that runs from, that runs across the whole axis of the continent.
What's that town out in Texas I told you that I starts with a D that I drive through when I go to New Mexico? There's a rodeo town at the tip of Texas out there. Not Darlington, but it's something like it. But either way, I drive through it every time I go, and it just reminds me of Pure Country, the George Strait movie.
Right.
Every time I drive through it, I'm always like, usually it's about 2 a.m. when I'm driving past, and I'm like, man, I just want to come here for a weekend one day and just see what these people do. Yeah, just see what I want to go to, because you're right. You know, I grew up in the era of right as I was about 5, my mom and them still went out to a place called the Palace, which was a dance hall, and that doesn't exist anymore. There is no where we call it, they call it twang country, but there is no. And then here's red dirt, but it's kind of gone. We have the one rodeo bar we had here in town is gone. Wichita's got one. They got one with actual bulls. You can ride bulls down there inside the bar, actual live bulls.
Now see.
You were talking
I
about
have to clarify. Red dirt is almost Southern rock.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Not quite. It's not quite. It's a kind of country, but the country that that country culture like you're talking about, it's gone. And it used to be it was influenced by oil field work and beef cattle, really, and those jobs are just gone. And there's more drilling offshore, less inshore. There's less good jobs for those kind of people, those kind of technical people that would work outside, work with their hands. And beef cattle stuff, so much of that's been automated. A lot of that stuff's gone. The small operators aren't around. And if that goes away, they can't have families, and so they end up going to Dallas and going to Houston and working some goddamn cubicle or whatever. And the cubicle farm is not a great originator of culture.
No,
that's the truth.
There's not going to be any great new music that arises from the cubicles.
Techno.
Well, you were talking about, that the whole idea, we were talking about the whole idea of being authentic earlier. And, that's one of the things I really see in the Kansas City, like, because what they do, I mean, Kansas City still has, a number of, country type bars. They do a big deal in the summer up at, Kansas City Power and Light. They do hot country nights.
Hot country nights, yeah.
But I'm a farm kid. I was raised on a farm. My dad's a veterinarian, so I grew up around horses, cattle, all that stuff. And I go to that thing and I see a bunch of people playing cowboy is what it is. it's not, there's nothing authentic about it. And that's what, like I said, I think that's my biggest thing with, like you said, Nashville's dead. It is, because there's nothing authentic about it anymore. It's just all contrived. And like I said, I think it's disgusting personally, but
it's Duck Dynasty's fault.
But what are we going to do? One of my favorites is Dale Watson. You can go listen to Dale Watson and the Lone Stars. I mean, it's just honky tonk stuff, man. And I go to his shows whenever I can. He plays at Knuckleheads in Kansas City every now and then. He'll play at the Mercury Lounge here in Tulsa, and he's real country. Yeah. And he's getting close to 60, and the people that go are LARPing. And hell, I probably am too. I haven't hauled hay in 35 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
But the people that created that culture, that music, that culture that music came out of, just doesn't even exist. It doesn't even exist. The act of going to one of those shows is it's an act of nostalgia. And it's easy to get irritated. I've gone to some of those and like, these people are a bunch of LARPers, but where are the real folks? They're all gone. There used to be a deal in Claremore, Oklahoma, the seat of Rogers County, the Claremore Roundup Club, and people go up there and dance on Saturdays. It's gone.
Yeah.
Those folks are like my dad. They're in bed by 9:30.
There used to be
it's just, even Jeff and I, we were a couple months ago, we were down in Emporia, Kansas for a medical conference. And we were looking at, Little Texas was going to be playing. And we were like, man, we should go see that, because it reminded me of my childhood. But we didn't even go to that. And I just think that lifestyle is only, I think it's down to just certain counties now, whereas it used to be kind of a universal thing to do. But at the same time, people, I don't think that fear mongering, I don't think people are afraid to get out of their house, but it's with all the crazy shit that happens in the world, it's not like it was 30, 40 years ago. And so I think for a lot of people, they're just kind of like, and then in Kansas, you have a ton of farmers who, they may have 5 or 6 kids, but 5 or 6 kids don't want to be farmers. They don't want to carry on the legacy. So it's a dying breed, because you're having guys who are 80, 90 years old now getting skin cancer and kind of passing away and not wanting to, they don't have anything to leave it to. And so they're selling their farms off for cheap, and that's it.
I'd be glad to die of skin cancer at 80 to 90. I'll take that. I'll take those odds, Alex. That sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it, to be honest. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know, man. I think it's a weird, I was in El Paso 2 months ago, and I left El Paso in 2012, and it was still to me a little city. It wasn't, it still had its culture. And, I was there 2 months ago, and it reminded me of, I don't know what it reminded me of, to be honest. It looked like somebody had taken what would have been the landscape of El Paso and just put conglomerate, shops up. I called Jeff like the second day I was there, and I went, man, I fully remember why I moved. I fully remember why I no longer lived in El Paso, but it wasn't what it used to be. And I think that for a lot of things in life, we get to where nostalgia, we're thinking about things. And, for a long time, when I moved away from El Paso, I used to call it the gym of the secret gym of America. Cause I thought it was a city that a lot of people didn't know about. And it was, a pretty well kept secret. And then I went back and I was like, man, this is just not what I remember, and it was a letdown. I was there for 4 days, 5 days.
Yeah.
Something like that. And not that I didn't have a good time. I got to see some friends and some old buddies and some people I hadn't seen, but I drove home thinking it was a waste of time almost, because I was like, man, things have changed.
The rate of change is a big problem. I don't want to just sound like Grandpa Hambrick, like griping about stuff, but like, my parents are in their 70s at this point, and what advice can my parents give me about my weird online great books thing and my weird podcast business, right? Like, it becomes difficult. So if I'm a farmer and I have a kid and then he's a farmer. There's a great deal of knowledge, experience, and culture I can transmit to that person, to that kid, that's relevant for the kid, But if times change and the world's 20% different for the kid than it was for me, well, I'm 20% irrelevant. My experience is 20% irrelevant. Well, what if things change so quickly that 30 years past the kid being born, everything's different? At that point, it's impossible for the parent to transmit useful, relevant culture to the child. So the rate of change has picked up so much that it makes parenting difficult. It makes navigating social situations difficult. And at this point, I think that the rate of change, by the way, the life expectancy is not going up.
No,
we're not getting new antibiotics and stuff. Shit is only changing for the sake of the change. We talk about it on the Barbell Logic podcast. We make jokes about it, about having difficulty relating with millennials, and maybe more so them relating to us. And I think it's not their fault. Their world is significantly different than mine. We dated when I was a kid. We didn't have cell phones. We used pay phones. You'd go cruise Main Street because you didn't even know where your friends were. But if I go on Main Street, maybe I'll find them. Like, it was a much different world, and we can't really transmit culture to each other. And when people need to be really cautious about this idea that change is great, because you can change yourself not right out of a job, but right out of a family, right out of a meaningful life where you can't even talk to people anymore.
That's one of the things Tom and I have talked a lot about, especially being older, in our 30s and being in college. And most of our classmates are between 18 and 22 years old, and it's really funny to me because looking at them, I look back and I say, man, like 20 years ago seems like it was yesterday to me. And they look at me and they say 10 years from now seems like an eternity.
Yeah.
It's just so funny how that time works that way.
21 to 30 is probably some of the weirdest times in life, because you have this social structure that you have to abide by, almost, where basically says you got to get married, you got to have kids by a certain point. And if you fall out of that realm, like we did, you get to a point to where you don't feel uncomfortable. But like I go and I have a lot in common with 20-year-olds, but then I have a ton of stuff that's not in common with 20-year-olds at all. Like at all. I mean, I've heard the vocabulary that a 20-year-old has is scary. It is scary to me. We had a guy over here, and I love him to death, man. I really do. He's a good guy. And he does our video work for us, and great photographer. He's taken some great pictures, does some really good stuff. And where I would look at a picture and say, man, that's beautiful. He looks right at this photo he took and he goes, look at this. That's fire. That's all he said. And I was like, yeah, that is fire, man. Because that's just where they're at now. And it doesn't make them ignorant by any means. We have people that we go to school with that are 19-year-olds and blow us out of the water. We got this one kid, Isaac, who, as soon as he builds up his confidence a little bit, he's going to do great things in the world. He is one of the smartest kids I've ever met. He's way smarter than I am. Jeff's smarter than I am, but Isaac is smart.
Isaac's next level smart.
He's next level smart. And he's one of those people that you kind of find hope in the next generation kind of thing. And I think that when you talk about rapid change, though, I think that if you take a knee in life, you kind of fall to the wayside in the things that are coming. But I don't think that change necessarily is bad, but I see a lot of things that are changing now that I don't believe are good. And I'm a very conversational person. And I do believe that this anxiety driven, ADD driven, getting nervous about talking to people thing, I think that is an issue. I think that's going to cause problems in the workplace later on. The ability to not have a conversation with someone, it doesn't have to be confrontational. But we have people all the time. Let's say that you get a test back and you got a question right on it or something, or you want to question why they marked a certain point off. We have classmates that'll be like, I can't go talk to the professor. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't go talk to the professor? I can't do that. I can't do that. And I'm like, well, no, you have a valid argument. You should go sit down with him. You're 19, 20 years old. You're an adult. You should go have, I can't do that. I can't. How many times have we seen that? It scares me because I'm like, you do realize these professors are only a few years older than Jeff and I. Like, if you could talk to us about it, you could definitely talk to them about it. I know they see us peer to peer, but it's weird having conversations with people in that age bracket. It's weird because they just don't know how to articulate their ideas and what they want to say, and it comes across as just an awkward, not rudeness, but it comes across as an awkwardness that's just kind of like
a timidity.
Yeah, they're very timid, but it makes them look more ignorant than they are. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in the actual definition of ignorant. It makes them look like.
Well, you hear this.
Do what?
You hear this crazy. You hear this Malcolm Gladwell thing. He's like, 10,000 hours and you become an expert. This 10,000 hour rule, right? And if you don't text and you don't email and you don't use Discord or Twitch or whatever, and you actually have to, by the time you're 19, you've talked to your classmates and girls, things like that for 10,000 hours, you've got some reps in, and you've got some facility with language and you can express yourself and you can fumble through a conversation and live to tell about it and learn to be okay with it. They don't have the amount of practice with that stuff at a given age as somebody did, 25 or 30 years ago. So the medium is changing the way our minds work and making, it's not that I say beautiful and they say fire. Here's the real problem. When I was a kid, you would have to buy a roll of film and you would take a picture and then you would go get it developed. It was expensive and you had to wait. And so pictures were very, very special. Pictures are not special to them now. And that makes a person have a different kind of mind. And it's not better and it's not worse, but it's changed. So how do you transmit culture to someone whose notions of words and language are different, whose notions of images and imagery are different? All of those things make it very, very impossible to come to political consensus, have pleasant conversations. And we're finding out it makes it hard to reproduce.
Yeah,
I'm looking at you, Jeff. But
what about Tom?
Tom will have kids, man, one day.
Oh, Tom too. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I got dogs.
Yeah, both of you guys. You got dogs? Oh, you're a dog mom. Jesus
I'm a
Christ.
Dog mom.
Yeah,
I
right.
sip my coffee. I pet my Siberian Husky. It's a great life.
People used to have children and dogs. It was the damnedest thing.
I'll do that one day.
Damnedest thing.
But I do agree with I do agree with you. I think my life trajectory is why I don't have kids, to be honest, just the military and then getting out and doing it. But I do agree with you in that point. The one thing that I will say that gives me hope with culture is, when you go to Italy or you go to other countries, and we talked about this, is that when you go and see a piece of art like, Michelangelo's David, or you go and see the Medici chapels, even not Palermo. What got hit by the volcano? Pompeii. Thank you.
Pompeii.
I blanked. When you go and you see that with people who are 18, 19, 20 years old, and they still get the awe out of it, there's some kind of hope there that they do understand culture on a surface level, at least, and I believe that the Mayan ruins, things like that. When I was down there last year, you see people who were just standing and looking. And the one thing, and I'm guilty of this, the one thing that I wish I did better was put down the camera, put down the phone and actually take in my surroundings. Because what I go back and I look on my phone, and it's really, really great that I have 35 pictures of Jananchowicz, but at the same time, in my actual memory bank, I don't remember that much. When I look at the pictures, I'm like, oh yeah, but I can't, 100 years ago, you could sit and write a poem about the beauty of where you just were.
You're so busy documenting it that you can't even experience
it. Exactly. that there's no experience to it anymore.
Yeah.
And I promised myself, I leave for Italy here in about 2.5 weeks. And I promised myself this time around that I was going to be better about not doing that. Cause when I was in, Capri, Pompeii last year, I was on my phone taking pictures and snapping people and getting it back to America, doing the whole Instagram girl model thing. And I didn't
shame on you.
I know. And I didn't take it in for what it was. I didn't take it in for what it was worth. And I know I didn't. And, I look back on that and it really disappoints me that I did that.
Well, live and learn, right? I mean, that's what you're going to do.
I'll probably make the same mistake again this time.
Smack the shit out of you if you post anything on Instagram while you're in Italy that whole month.
I'll probably post something.
Shit.
Yeah, post. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, man, that's been 2 hours. We started with how terrible Catcher in the Rye is. I think we should probably finish up on how terrible Catcher. Am I wrong about that, guys?
No, you're not.
No.
And what's the other one that's terrible now that you're adult? Hatchet.
Did you just say Hatchet's terrible? Now I'm an adult. Shame on you.
Hatchet
first
is
of all.
terrible.
Gary Paulson's is a national treasure.
Hatchet's not terrible. Hatchet's not terrible.
Hatchet's
you got self-sufficiency in there.
You get out of here.
Self-sufficiency in there.
Self-sufficiency. What's the
exhibiting some virtue?
Whatever.
Shame on you.
What's the one where he goes in the woods?
Whatever.
Why can I not think today?
I don't know, dude. Maybe you need to drink some more
it's
coffee.
Not Emerson. It's not. Who is
You're
it?
talking about Walden?
Walden. Thank you. Haha.
Throw.
Man,
I'm losing it.
Throw. Yeah.
What are you going to do when I'm not in Italy with you to remember shit for you?
Read James Joyce in Italian. That's what I'm going to do.
All right, dude. If you do that, I'll be impressed.
Transcript.
What do you say about James Joyce?
James Joyce. No.
What about Thomas Pynchon? You ever tried to read Gravity's Rainbow? God.
I have not.
Don't.
It's one of those I've definitely tried. I've never succeeded.
But Scott, thank you so much, man. You want to go ahead and give a little plug into your podcast there?
Yeah, man. Go listen to all the shows. You can go listen to Barbell Logic podcast. Those come out Mondays and Thursdays and Saturdays, and the Online Great Books podcast comes out once a week. I don't know when it comes out exactly. I think it's Wednesdays. And you can check out those spicy Great Books memes at Online Great Books. And I'm on Instagram. I'm at Scott_Silver Strength. And I don't even know what my Instagram account's about, but what's it about, Thomas?
It's just you going Instagram live, and you can't tell if you're angry or happy, and it's just you talking to people. That's a good representation of your Instagram. Sometimes I get on, I'm like, man, this guy's had a bad day, and then you'll say something funny, and I'm like, no, he's doing all right.
Well,
I'm only happy when I'm angry.
Really appreciate you coming and spending a couple hours with us today. I had a really enjoyable time just kind of letting this run wherever it went. So,
Scott Hambrick, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And
thanks, guys. A whole lot of fun. We started out to have a quick conversation, and we go for 2 hours. I could do 2 hours more. We'll do it again.
Yeah, I thought we were going to do an hour.
Should we do show prep next time?
Shit.
I'm about to prolapse here, so I'm gonna have to.
All right, we'll catch you later.
We'll catch you later, Scott. Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.